Okay, so we are live. For those of you watching live, welcome. For those of you watching on the replay, I hope you enjoy this. So my guest today is Dion. Dion, I've said it right.
Oh, yes, you got it.
Cool. Right. I know we had the conversation before, but yeah, I'm good. I got it right. So Dion, I always say this as the introduction. I never introduce my guest because I'm going to miss the highlights. I ask you to introduce yourself, who you are, maybe some context, and anything you think would be useful for people to know about you before we dive into the conversation.
Sure. Well, my name is Dion Nichols Germain, aka the Chief Forgiveness Officer. I have a message that I want to spread around the world around the power, the transformational power of forgiveness. And I do that as a keynote, as an executive coach, and as an author. So I'm actually also the Forbes featured author of the 90-day Conquering Unforgiveness Journal for High Performing High Achievers. And I'll leave that there for now because I'm sure we'll get into a whole conversation around that. But yeah, I'm sure nobody just picks up and decides they want to take on one of the most difficult, messy, most complicated topics like forgiveness. So I do
Yeah.
definitely have a personal testimony around that, and it basically revolves around betrayal, even infidelity, a secret child. I was able to forgive and just saw the rippling effects that took place because I did. And as a recovering perfectionist, not sure if there's any out there right now, um, I just noticed as an executive coach working with clients around the world, and it didn't matter if they were in the C suite, mid level, on the front lines, Italy to the UK. I'm not exaggerating. Doesn't matter what industry. What I came to realize, male or female, that as humans, we're just really hard on ourselves, and it's holding us back. And so that's what wakes me up every morning, is to help people not only forgive themselves, but learning to forgive others. And I take this into the workplace, because I also believe organizations. So on the organizational level, on the team level, when we are creating a forgiving culture, people and profits thrive.
Wow. It's That's amazing. So there's so many different ways I want to get into this. So for those of the people listening, so we actually spoke very briefly. So when we actually came into contact, we had a conversation, and I stopped you almost mid sentence, and I said, I can't let you talk because there's so much gold in everything that you say, and I have so many questions, so many sort of threads to pull on to sort of understand where this takes us, the things that we don't know. So yeah, I kind of stopped you mid-flow so that we could I make sure all the gold comes out during this conversation. So I guess so there's so many places I want to start, but the thing that you said about forgiveness in terms of ourselves
Mhm.
and others, it brings up this thing in my mind about how hard we are on ourselves, and like you mentioned about the perfectionist, etc. So I mean, we'll get into your work in a second, but where do you see the biggest forgiveness? Is it the forgiveness for ourselves? Do you think that's the biggest aspect, or is it the forgiveness of others and things that have happened to us? Where do you see that?
Wow. I will say this: forgiving others is very hard. We know this. But it seems like it takes so much longer. I think it's more about the level of duration and intensity when it comes to ourselves. I feel like that's even harder. And when we can really strengthen ourselves in that area, then it makes it easier for us to forgive others. But where I see the distinction is that there's something about guilt and shame. You may be familiar with Dr. Brené Brown's work. It is so debilitating because it's the way it lives inside of you. And we rarely talk about those things. We're quicker to complain about other people. We're much willing to go and vent somewhere else, that gossip, all the things. to get our validation for what they did and justify. We're much easier at talking about our resentments towards others, but I feel we truly isolate a lot more. And so those dark swirling thoughts, they last a lot longer because we're not as quick to talk about it, those inner voices.
Yeah. And I think this is such an interesting topic. So I think most people are quite hard on themselves. I have come across people that aren't, and it's so nice to be around people like that. They just kind of accept themselves, not fully. There's still maybe a little bit of things that they don't want to say, but it's so nice and refreshing to be around someone like that who just goes, yeah, I'm human, I make mistakes, I do all of this. And what I found by being around people like that is that it was actually easier for me to do it, because again, I think this guilt and shame, these feelings or emotions, I don't know how you best want to describe it, but yeah, the ability to sort of just let that go. And I think that's what happens most of the time. We keep this stuff in. We don't want to be judged by others. We're already judging ourselves. And it's kind of this weird codependency thing. I can't say, what I've done, or I feel bad about it. And it's, it feels like this thing that's ever growing. And I guess having these open conversations, being able to talk about it, and it doesn't need to be a tsunami of everything all at once. I imagine it starts quite small. But when you do that, life gets a bit easier. I feel is that how's that?
Oh, you hit the nail on the head. Not enough of us are doing it, but when we do, as leaders, as colleagues, as you said, we give others permission to do the same, because so normally we are walking around, especially in the workplace, when we're known to have to compartmentalize the humanity piece, right? And put on the armor. And it's that armor, that protective armor, that's getting in the way. But when we put it down, when we put the perfectionist mask down, we're more vulnerable. It's more because we're more exposed, right? But it's that vulnerability, it's that authenticity that allows for the connection, the trust, right? The permission to flow through.
Yeah.
You nailed it.
So I'm just as you were talking, I was thinking. So I used to work in corporates for a long time, pretty much the banking sector, and I had a lot of great experiences there. But there's a lot of ego. There's a lot of I would say imposter syndrome masking itself as I don't know, ego, status, a whole load of things wrapped up in there. So I was just wondering, so obviously you go and teach this, you do talks, etc. So, but you do workshops. I'm just trying to imagine, having worked with some of these people before, what's the first step of doing that? Like, because I'm thinking of some of the big managers, and you talked about leadership, etc. Where do you first start with that? What's the smallest bit you can start to sort of say to some of these people who, they've got to a certain level, they want to be thought of a certain way? What's the starting point for that conversation, and how does it work? And just tell me a bit more about it.
Sure. So the first place I start is actually really explaining what actually gets in the way of forgiveness. And again, you're right on point. First and foremost, it's pride. It's pride, it's fear, it's the insecurities, the self-doubts, the limiting beliefs, right? And I also start the workshop by asking, has anybody ever been taught? And normally it's crickets.
Taught forgiveness?
Taught forgiveness.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So right off the bat, like, what did you learn about forgiveness growing up? Let's just start there. And so it already has people, wow. Most times it's crickets because we've never been modeled it. So
Yeah.
already you can already take the armor down, because hey, typically when we grew up, it was either, all of a sudden Uncle Johnny's not sitting at the Thanksgiving dinner day table anymore. No explanation of what's going on. Or you hear your mom, I'm not talking to this person because they did this. Nobody's actually talking to me. So we never really, or it was, oh, you hit your brother, Johnny, make sure you forgive him. But that's not really true forgiveness. We weren't really taught.
Yeah.
So just leveling the playing field for everyone, that, yeah, there's so little that anybody really knows about this thing until we actually be intentional around it.
Yeah. I was just thinking when you actually said that as opener, I was like, wow, that's powerful, because I'm just thinking of all the meetings I've ever been in. People want to say, yeah, I know this, or they feel that they should know it in their domain. Okay, you need to be an expert. No one knows. Like, again, it's so I'm a big advocate that the school system should change in many ways, not just things like this, but emotional awareness. I want to say building companies. I don't necessarily mean that, but just a whole load of things that we don't teach kids that I think are, and things that I feel that I lack, and I think would be good. But yeah, when you bring that as a subject, it's like, no, it's that's very powerful. And so then what does that lead to? And then, yeah, who goes first in that scenario? As in, who's the bravest one to say? I don't know. Are you then looking at? Is there a secret people want to say? I don't know. My mind's blown. What's the next steps?
Well, in terms of when I ask that question,
Yeah.
Well, those are the responses I normally get. Either nothing, like, so you're just getting a whole lot of nothing, or what I did see wasn't healthy, and it wasn't really truly forgiveness. And then it's sort of just, again, when you're in community and you realize, hey, I'm not the only one, there's something so reassuring about that. So yeah, it just opens up the space.
Yeah.
For even more exploration versus I should know this.
So then I'm thinking of, when we initially talked, you said about how much productivity and performance goes up because of forgiveness. And it's when you said it to me, I was like, I didn't quite get it. And then I was like, yeah, there must be so much stuff that we're not saying about our colleagues, about how we feel. I actually, there was a post this morning about someone posted, someone I've done a LinkedIn Live with, and they were saying about conflict resolution. And I think oftentimes there are people that like to shout and be louder in the room, and they think that they've won because they've shouted and made the other person quiet. But I feel it goes the other way. It actually creates like resentment and things that you're not saying. Either you feel you've been belittled or something is against you. And that, again, I'm not brilliant with emotions, so please enlighten me for anything that I'm missing. But resentment, you hold things against people. Then when it comes time to doing, I don't know, not extra work, because I'm not someone that says that you need to keep working and working, but just not even going the extra mile, but doing the things that really matter. You would second guess it and go, well, no, this person treated me badly. We haven't talked about it. And so this whole thing is invisible, I think, to a lot of people in, I would say, the workforce. I'm going to say leaders, but I think it's everybody, but I know we'll talk about leaders. And that must damage everything, the workforce, how people show up, everything, right?
It does. I mean, that's a perfect example. So, and I actually worked with someone who experienced this, where the boss just chewed them out in front of the entire team. So guess what happened? Now this person, they made a mistake on some numbers. So the project was maybe, it was over budget or something. So guess what? Now, every time he's got a project to do, he is checking those numbers 2, 3, 4 times. That's now slowing down productivity. Now there's an attitude, well, let's, play it safe, right? I'm not going to take as much risk because I'm in this very punitive environment where mistakes are punished and punished in a way where I get embarrassed. So now I'm not even confident enough to even share my ideas or think outside the box in fear of being, not to mention the resentment that you have just energetically. How can you fully show up with that person? You're already looking for evidence that they're going to do more of it. So now you're isolating. Now you might be holding back, right? Not only your creativity, but maybe even resources, because that'll be my silent way of getting back to them. So you can just see the spiraling effect that can take place, right? In terms of the alienation, the competition, gossip, like, right? Because now we're going to start going to other people to get, validation for what they did. You can see how it just starts to fester, right? Just all thickening walls everywhere. And it's not helping the productivity or the psychological safety for people to feel safe to be creative and take risks.
Yeah, it's when you say that, you're basically switching off a big part of you, which companies really need to benefit from, because especially in today's day and age, we've got AI coming to automate the things that we don't need to think about or that can just be done routinely. So the space in terms of being creative, thinking of different ways, understanding, connecting other dots, I think it's, companies are really going to lose out if that happens to their people, and you're basically taking everything away from it. And and that must have a massive impact, on sort of taking risks, being creative, coming up with new ideas. It doesn't need to be bold and revolutionary. It just, just even 1% forward. If you've taken that away from someone showing up like that, that must have an impact on your bottom line, right?
It does. I actually wrote an article because there was actually a company who's modeling this really well. They actually operationalized this, going from a punitive culture to one that they call is just and learning.
Nice.
And there was a time where people were just, the way they were disciplining them, turnover was high. Their fear it's a company called Mercy Care, and they are one of the largest mental health care companies in the UK. And by shifting to this just and learning approach, where it went from, because basically a lot of what we find in the corporate space, it's fault finding, it's blame, right? Because everybody's trying to protect their title, their status, as you said, right? Going back to the ego running the show most of the time, right? So when it went from who's to blame to what went wrong or what are we missing, very different approach. So now it's about how do we have compassion for the person and what took place, and what can we learn? How can we make the adjustments so we can actually move forward in a way that is thriving all around for the person and for our way of doing things going forward? And what they found over the I can't remember the time span, but over the years, what they have found is that they've already saved over $2.5 million, pounds in cumulative savings, because a lot less turnover. Cases reported actually went up because now there's more trust towards leadership. And I could keep going.
It's again, I'm remembering my corporate days where we often used to go through these finger pointing exercises. You don't want to be the one, if something goes wrong, there's just so much energy and emotions, not emotions, but hiding emotions when something goes wrong, right? And it's just, so I remember something going wrong, and we had meetings after meetings after meetings to get to the, who did this, what, and it wasn't why, as in, okay, we want to fix it for the good. It was almost, they were looking for a scapegoat. And for me, so I've changed my mind on the way that we should work. I never really thought about it before, but now I think about experimenting more. I think about just trying, because I don't like this word failure, because it's always pass or fail, certainly like in school. And I think if companies can move away from that, it would have such a bigger impact, because I think if you think, okay, I'm either going to pass this or I'm going to fail this, then the chances of you actually trying go down. If you think, I'm going to experiment with this and I'm going to see what the outcome is so much better. And there's so much value in it. And again, experiments can be fun. And I think, if we take a lot of the pain or the guilt or whatever these feelings are and all this energy away from the negative side and put it onto a more positive track, like that must, there's no way in the world that's not going to benefit people, companies, profits, right?
And those who do see the results. So for example, Google, everybody's trained in that growth mindset approach. You may already be familiar with Dr. Carol Dweck. She did a 5-year study on how people approach setbacks, failures, and those who could approach it with a growth mindset, meaning one, compassion, right? Of course, I'm disappointed about how the project went. I thought, it was going to be a hit. Didn't go quite according to plan. Of course, I would feel this way. Feel the feels. You actually got to take time to process. What is that healthy way that you can actually release those emotions and then find the learning? So it's less about the pass or fail, as you said, but who am I becoming through the process? Knowing that mistakes, failures, setbacks are iterations. That's part of the iteration of the innovative process towards success.
Yeah.
So I love where you're going with it.
That can be fun as well, right? Just because if you all want to get to the same goal, if you want to be number one in your industry or whatever the goal is, it doesn't have to be number one. But just go, okay, how can we make this better? And in my mind, it creates this team dynamic. Whereas I think what happens in a lot of companies is, I want to be number one in this company. I want this, and again, maybe ego, status, money, a whole load of things showing up. But I know there's a few solopreneurs that are doing very well, but I think in a company, you want to work together, right? You want to have a single goal, and you want to clear the things that are holding you back. And again, what I love about this is you're the first person I've ever heard talking about this. So I don't know if there's other people out there, but this is such an invisible blockage, and and it must show up without us knowing. And I was even thinking about so as companies, we like to measure so much, and I used to be this chief happiness officer. It was a title that was given to me. I know it's more common in the US, not so much in Europe, but it was one of those weird things. I didn't give myself the title. It was a conversational starter for sure. Sometimes I liked it, sometimes I didn't. It was very misunderstood. I think they thought that I was, like a happy clown every moment of every day, or I was handing out toys, or everything was going to be great. And it wasn't that. It was about having conversations with people, understanding what's going on, whether it's good or bad, or, okay. And if I say good or bad, they're very big extremes, but what's going on? Do they like the job that they're doing? How are things, sort of showing up for them? All private conversations. But I know the impact of having those conversations. I walked away often and people were very happy just to have a moment to walk away from their desk, maybe just share something on their mind. And I wasn't there to resolve people's problems. I was there to listen to people. But at the end of that, I actually tried to sell this as a consultancy service at one point. And it's very difficult. I mean, you've obviously had a lot of success in what you're doing, but when it's an intangible thing, I know you can do a score. Okay, how did you feel before my conversation? How did you feel after? But a lot of these intangible things, can't fit into a spreadsheet, can't be explained necessarily. And I think when it comes to emotions, feelings, etc., it can be very difficult. So I it's a long-winded thought of mine, but how do you have metrics that you use to sort of measure this, or is it just the feeling in the room? How do you do it?
Sure. So I will say I want to piggyback a bit on what you were saying earlier though, around the core of your role, which was around having these open, honest, courageous conversations.
Mm.
That's a measure in itself when our people are doing that. Because when we're holding on to to resentment and grudges and anger, we're not having those conversations. So when we are practicing forgiveness, where we actually have to have the courageous conversation, perhaps take on, because when we're not forgiving and we can have that justification of what they did and we're so focused over there, we also allows us to take ourselves off the hook.
Mm.
And where we may need to take some responsibility and look into ourselves. So by avoiding those conversations, we may also be missing out on some gold. But
Yeah.
when we are willing to come from here down here and humble ourselves to take ownership, potentially, apologize, or at least open the conversation, not from, blame game, but curiosity, again, going from head to heart. You notice we've got to get down here to be able to have those courageous conversations, to be able
Yeah.
to call people forth versus calling them out. Very different when we're in the right heart posture. But that whole experience of forgiveness is what allows for that. And so when we can, more trust is built, more connection, more opportunity for collaboration, learning. Now we can learn something from this. So now there's growth, there's expansion as a person, as a leader, in addition to the relationship dynamic with your colleague or team. And then that multiplies outward. If we're doing that as a team, much less, individually, you can see what's possible. And that's already a measure.
Yeah.
If my team is able to actually have conversations, they're more collaborative. So that means now we're more engaged and now we're more creative and innovative. You can see why profitability goes up, turnover, absenteeism, because may I add, well-being is impacted. Mind, body, and soul, when we are harboring unforgiveness and vice versa, is impacting us on all three levels. So if we're not calling out as much, if we can be healthy and well, all of that helps our bottom line. Not to mention the practice of, sorry, I start getting on a roll here, but the practice of forgiveness actually also creates more emotionally intelligent, resilient leaders. Because when we can slow down, right, take that pause and reflect on what's happening, be willing to, identify what you're feeling on your end, being able to slow down and then have that courageous, if you're more emotionally, you're just making better decisions overall as a leader. Everybody wins.
Yeah, it's something I've been talking about for a while. I say self-awareness is a superpower. And I've spoken to a few people and they've said, yeah, people say that they're self-aware, but they're not actually self-aware. So I've actually been through therapy, and I talk about this all the time because I think there's a lot of shame, especially for men, to say that they've been in therapy. But I remember one of the first sessions I went to therapy for, my therapist, she said to me, it's very courageous what you're doing, and we often have it backwards. We say it's like, oh, you're weak, you can't handle the world or situations. And she said, no, you're brave because you're actually looking inside yourself. And it was honestly, so I think that is a journey of discovery for the rest of my life. And I enjoy it, not in the way that I can blame things or use it as to say, oh, I'm a victim of my circumstances or anything like that. I started off in that route, trying to sort of not justify, but understand, okay, why do I feel that way? And that took a little while, but then I went beyond that and I started understanding, okay, these are my thoughts, these are my feelings. And again, I'm very bad at understanding my emotions. I think there's about 4 emotions, but I know there's so many more than that. But understanding that, and again, I don't think we master that stuff. Life gets in the way, situations show up, and it's sort of up and down. But having that, starting to be sort of self-aware, even of triggers, of things that I'm doing. You mentioned well-being, and so when I was a chief happiness officer, it seemed to surround itself in this well-being space, and I think that's become a trend. And people say we've got well-being as like a tick the box exercise, but no one, and that well-being is okay. Yeah, you can take a break, or we've got I don't know, beers in the fridge or something like that. But actually, understanding your emotions, having these conversations, understanding what's kind of ruling, and going on. When you described it to me, the thoughts of, how I'm going to feel when I turn up to work. Now we've cleared the air. Now someone's apologized to me. I'm going to feel better, because I know when we hold stuff in, even if it's resentment, we're not talking about it. We say the body holds the score. And just imagine going to work and feeling so much more relaxed and open. Like, that's well-being in my mind. It's not, some fancy fridge or a pool table somewhere,
When you can show up whole, the whole person can come to work. Imagine how much more, especially in the world we're living in today, that we need to be able to come in feeling grounded in who we are and well. Yeah, absolutely. And you had said something, and I just lost it. So much, there was so much goodness in what you shared. Around the self-awareness piece. Like, when we don't know what's running the show, we're just operating out of our automatic. And so that's why we may not get the results that we want in the end, right? Because typically all of those are fear-based, fear-driven, right? And then we're wondering why, we're having blow-ups in the conference room, right? Because we're afraid to be found out that we're either not smart enough or good enough. That's really what's going on. So the more that we can do our work is why we're able to show up in a way where when there is a breakdown, we can respond from that healthier, more whole place. And the response is always so much better.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. I was thinking again how this actually works. So again, I'm just thinking of my corporate days, and sorry to keep bringing it to that, but so you work in teams. I'm just thinking, because a lot of times, a lot of the managers I've ever worked with never apologize. They have this almost like this, they don't have that vocabulary. And I'm just wondering, in certain situations, I've had some not great bosses. I've had some good bosses, please don't get me wrong. But if I was to think to myself, I remember, I'll tell you the example of this particular boss. Every day you didn't know who you were going to get. I call it like Jekyll and Hyde. Like, he'll praise you, but this can also exist in the same 2-minute conversation. He will beat you up about something, then he'll compliment you, and then you think, oh, okay, no, we're okay. And then as you're leaving the meeting, like, he'll beat you up about something. And it was very strange. And I was like, what's this? And I'm just trying to think, if he was in a workshop with, let's say it's him and there were 20 people underneath him, where do you start in that conversation? Do you start with him, or do you start with everybody? And do you actually, I don't know how you get someone like that to understand the power of apology and saying sorry. And oftentimes I've found with people that can't say sorry, there's something very deep rooted in them. I don't know why they can't say it, but it's something that they're holding on to. How do you get past that?
in that case, well, I'll say this sounds like something I would start with him first.
Okay.
That's something that
This
seems like
secretly
like
without everyone else there.
that would be a one-on-one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think of, I don't know how I would know that unless I'm brought in, right? That he has this pattern, if you will. So if I know this, I think I actually have to work on coaching with him first because there's something deeper. And that's what I was saying. There's usually, when we're unable to forgive, it's something so much deeper that's going on around these, whatever shaped our limiting beliefs, our values is what's getting in the way of forgiveness. So, or apologizing. So I think we actually have to go back further and deal with that. But like I said, the first thing I do in general around a workshop is debunking. First of all, actually identifying what gets in the way of people forgiving. One of those limiting beliefs is forgiveness is weak. I mean, most times I can just say the first part, you fill in the blank, and that's typically the resounding response, right? That we've learned over time. We are more powerful when we hold on to our anger and resentment. Meanwhile, it's actually killing us. Actually, we're acting like a victim, that this thing has so much hold on us, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Right? It's actually boundaries that protect us. And so, by the way, you may not always get the apology, but how can I still forgive? So we haven't even touched on that part yet. That forgiveness is a choice. It's not a feeling. Right? So it's a deliberate, conscious decision to release the negative emotions, the anger, the resentment, regardless if the person is worthy of that forgiveness. And that's where people are bunched up, because the focus is all about, well, I'm not going to let them off the hook, but really it's about your freedom, your peace, your joy. So when you are able to face what is, because forgiving is not about, just suppressing. That's another myth. It's not about sweeping things under the rug. It's actually facing those emotions and working through those. And there's several ways to do that. But at the end of the day, it's what can allow you, because you may or may not ever get that apology. What if that person's passed away? Like in your case, this man's still alive. So perhaps through some coaching, I can get him there, right? But if you still have to work with him, what I'm always looking at is, how can I become I say victor, or instead of the victim, how do I become the victor? How do I become the generator of my experience? What is within my control? Because I can't control him, but what can I do? So that's where the accountability, taking responsibility. Maybe there's something I'm supposed to be getting here. What's my growth opportunity? Because when we're so focused on what they did, and I always like to use this analogy, how many more fingers are pointing back at us? There's so many more. So in this case, with this boss, maybe the opportunity is for you to be practicing self-advocacy, believing that you're worthy of taking up space. Maybe there's a worthiness thing that you're supposed to be. So do you see where I'm going with it? We might miss, because I also use this example or this analogy as well, that the most difficult, challenging person, thing is usually in our life for a reason. They usually become our greatest teacher. So when you just already shift your mindset in that way, you start to look at the situation differently. And so maybe I'm supposed to be practicing courageous conversations in this moment. Yes, he's my boss, but he's also a human. What if there's something he's going through and I have no idea? And now to be clear, compassion is not condoning. We can have compassion and still address the situation. So what if no one's ever stopped to ask him, are you okay? Just wondering, because I noticed this. And through that empathy, humanity, curiosity, you might be able to get to forgiveness. And you might be the first person to ever ask him, what if this man breaks down at his desk in tears because he didn't tell anybody he's been going through divorce? And his wife always told him he never amount to much. What if that story's been playing in his head the whole time? So I just keep cutting you down. I can feel like I am worthy here at work. I'm just making things, stuff up. But I'm just saying those are the possibility, the exponential healing that's available when we're willing to take the focus off all they did wrong and what might be the opportunity for me here in this moment.
Yeah. It's really strange because when you explained that, I was like, oh yeah, like, obviously I'm holding on to some resentment about this old boss for sure. And but I was like, yeah, that's the thing. It's I felt that I needed an apology to move on, but you can move on. That's your choice, right? And it starts with you. And like you said, the control is all of yours, and we think we don't have control over. I don't think we have control over our mind because it can throw up some weird and wacky things from time to time, but we can control if we listen to it. And that's not, I don't believe it's, it's not just like a one shot and done. I think that's a practice that you can do through mindfulness or anything else, journaling, a whole load of things. But when you said that, I was like, yeah, the goal isn't to get him to apologize and then clear the air, because there's always going to be something, right? There's always going to be conflict, or someone's in a bad mood or something didn't go right. I know that can shift over time, but if you start with yourself and go, okay, I forgive, and it's not just saying the words, right? You've got to feel it, right? It's not, that starts. I would imagine I was trying to think as you were talking, so I was actually doing the practice. I was thinking, like, what was going on for this guy? Like, maybe he's a tortured soul. Maybe he's really hard on himself internally. And like you go, and when you start to think of someone like that, not in pity, but in a curious way, and kind of go, okay, what's going on for this guy? It opens up a whole sort of different dynamic of how you think and interact with that person. And again, you could be the first person, like you said, to ask him, are you okay?
Yeah. It brings out the humanity, because we all have our stuff. Clearly what I'm hearing with this person, there is something deeper going on. That's just the outer symptom.
Yeah.
But we would have to get to the root of what's really happening, because no one wants to just treat people that way. So what is it on a deeper level that's affecting him, that this is how he's showing up? And so when you can show up with that humanity, I do love Dr. Brené Brown's work. And she talked about how her husband, she asked him, do you believe people are doing the best that they can? And he thought for a moment, and he said, well, you know what? I actually don't know if they are. I just know that I feel better when I believe that they are. Like, just not looking for the worst, but trusting they're doing the best that they can with what they've got at the time, but maybe with some support, some counseling, some coaching, some, they can actually get to the highest and best version of themselves. But right now they're just doing the best that they can. And I'll just choose to believe that's where he's at right now. Doesn't mean his behavior is okay. What is within my control to perhaps, be able to create something new with him, right? But what if we started there first?
Yeah.
So I'm going to choose to forgive him because of his humanity. There's certainly something deeper going on, and perhaps what's the opportunity for me to practice here?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think, this theme of, it starts with us, right? Taking responsibility and ownership and I want to say integrity. I think that's a fair statement, of how we're showing up, how we think, etc. And I think, it just feels to me, the more, it's not that we have to take responsibility for absolutely everything in the world. There's certain things in our control. and and it takes practice, it takes time. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to be like this, and you have to set some realistic goals and sort of incrementally, sort of, I would say, take more ownership. But that whole thing about starting with yourself, must lead to other people, even if it's not that boss. It must, your colleagues, people around you, your family, your friends, etc. Like I said to you, when I've been around people that are kind to themselves, it's like this energy shifts. It allows me to be a bit kinder to myself. It's quite infectious, and yeah, it's such a noticeable difference for me, that the words that I use for myself, I'm not beating myself up. And you just go, oh, so I've started doing this a bit more recently. So I say, oh, that was stupid. And then I stop that and I go, no, that was silly. Like, silly makes it just less, takes the sting out of it. And when you're around people like that, all this stuff, this energy in being negative, beating ourselves up, that goes away a lot. And again, you can just go, okay, move on, rather than kind of get caught in this cycle in your mind and go, oh, I did something wrong, blah blah blah. So yeah, I think there's so much power in what you're saying. I think it's amazing.
Well, how do we build relationship? Think about it, right? When we're in relationship with someone, we've got to be kind. We have to be thoughtful. If someone, makes a mistake, do you just go in? I mean, if you are, again, let's look at that. But typically, you see someone at their desk, head in their hands, because, oh man, I just messed up. What's your initial reaction? To go over, maybe put your hand on their shoulder. Hey, you doing okay? Maybe offer some words of encouragement, anything that you need. Can I support you in any way? But it's interesting when it comes to ourselves. Why aren't we turning that back on ourselves when we mess up, have a setback, right? We're so harsh on ourselves. But the more we do offer ourselves that self-compassion, self-forgiveness, guess what? We're building more trust with ourselves. That's how you build trust, right? In a relationship over time. If someone feels safe to make a mistake, you're building trust. Well, imagine that every time you're compassionate in those moments with yourself, you're building trust with yourself. Your self-esteem goes up. Your self-worth. Like you said, you're more in integrity with yourself. All of those things go up when we offer ourselves more compassion and more forgiveness. So yes, that's why those voices, they will come. They never completely go away, as you said, but at least you'll catch it quicker. You don't dwell there as long, right? Because you're more healed and whole in your own body, in your own mind and soul.
Yeah, that's something I'm definitely going to take away. So yeah, let's just go back to when. So obviously you work with companies. I know there's an interesting company that you've worked for, and you can mention it if you like. But what makes people come to you for the first? Is it they feel that they've got a problem that's showing up? What's the trigger for people reaching out to you in the first place? Because again, thinking about my corporate life, oftentimes people have, managers have forced us into some sort of training, mandatory, and that can feel quite invasive because you didn't invite it in. And then sometimes you're like, well, okay. And if people explain why they're doing it or something like that, that would have gone a long way. And oftentimes what happens is the leadership teams, they put you into this training and they're not attending it themselves. And that in itself is just like, well, it was like, hang on, by doing that, you're pretty much saying that we're the problem or something like that. So there's quite a few questions in there, but what is the first trigger that people or companies come to you for? What do they see in the company? What is the thing, and where do you go from there?
Sure. I have a really great example. This was a community organization, and it was a huge multi-million dollar rebuild, basically. And so many stakeholders at play. And the company, the leaders themselves just felt like there was just so much back and forth, and there was so much tension. There were promises, and the promises were taken back. And so organizational change is a big one when leadership is not being um, uh, forthcoming with the impacts of the change or the changes themselves. It may be even a merger, and now they've got to figure out how to work with another team, and maybe they're resentful of this having to now work together. So that's a lot of the things I see. But in this particular case, it was the leadership who brought me in because their team just felt so resentful towards the executive leadership, and some of the other stakeholders that were involved. And that's why they called. Because if we're going to get through this, we're going to need some tools. And we need to be able to release the old to make room for this new thing that is going to be something great. But we need to be able to go in there free and clear and empowered, right? To go do some meaningful work. And so that's why they brought me in. And I'm happy to say they're now in their new space, and they still use those tools till this day.
And does that become part of their culture, the work that you do with them?
Yes, and it does. It does. Because I don't go in there teaching forgiveness like it's this fluffy woo-woo stuff. I am teaching it from the lens of leadership, practical leadership tools. And forgiveness itself, when I'm teaching the fundamental piece of it. So the leadership tools are the how you foster and sustain it, whether that's courageous conversations, domains of trust, delivering feedback, like all these things, when they can be done in a healthier, more humane way, is how we mitigate all of these, resentments and unmet expectations, et cetera. But when I'm foundationally teaching the forgiveness concept first, I do it in a way that's practical, actionable. I'm giving you tools that you can use in any situation. And you had actually mentioned earlier reflection, journaling. That's why my book is actually a journal format with guided prompts. And I called it, and I created a 90-day journal because we know it takes 30 days to make a habit, right? 90 days to make it a lifestyle. I actually want to help people make forgiveness a lifestyle, because the habits we form who we become.
Yeah.
So if we have tools to continue the work long after I'm gone, is how you can sustain. And with that said, when I was able to go back and see where they're at, they're like, Dion, we're still using those tools. And one of the key frameworks that I like to use is called the Forgiveness Dream Framework. And it's foundationally built on the power of actually living from our commitment.
Okay.
So
how does that work?
So basically the idea is that, so I'll actually give you a personal example as to what inspired this for me. When unfortunately my relationship, 17-year relationship with my college sweetheart, had to end due to infidelity. We did have a son together. He hurt me to my core. However, I chose forgiveness because I knew what I was committed to. And that was my son's well-being. So, yes, it hurt. Yes, I could have gone the bitter woman scorned route. I could have gone that way. That's easy. Living from your commitment, we all know, takes a lot more from you. to keep showing up from that place. And that's why the resilience is inevitable, because you have to keep showing up not based on your emotions, just your feelings, because we know feelings come and go, they're fleeting, right? They can't really be trusted. You don't want to make permanent decisions based on a short-term feeling. But when you can ground yourself in something greater like commitment, now you're using that as your lens to make decisions, how you show up, what you say or you don't say. And so I was able to get there and choose forgiveness because I was anchored into my commitment that my son would know that whether his parents were together or not, he would have a united front, that he would know he's loved and we've got his back. And that's what influenced how I showed up. And that was the power of me being able to forgive, the power behind why I was able to forgive. And because that was what was the lens through which I was making my decisions, is why we could do parent-teacher conference together. That's why we can have holiday, meals together. My husband and I, we go to his house, we bring the turkey. And we can all, so my son doesn't have to feel pulled at every holiday between two homes. We could take family trips together. We actually ended up launching a financial literacy youth program together, where my son actually got to see us rewrite our legacy and put good into the world, all because I chose forgiveness. And because I kept showing up from that place. I mean, that program, we ended up building that out together in New York City, working with under-resourced youth in high schools and youth organizations. From that, a 5-star rated podcast was born. And now we're reaching thousands, around the world. You get signed to a network, all because I forgave. And then now it's taking us back to our alma mater. We're both from Canada, because the university commissioned us basically to teach the program at the university, all because I forgave. And my dad, who I was estranged from for over 30 years at that point, unfortunately, he deals with mental illness. And when he had those breaks, he would be abusive towards my mother. And when you're 5 years old, he was removed from the home probably about the age of 5 or so. But all you know at 5 is you hurt my mom. And I held on to that for a really long time. But in my adulthood, now this program is flying us back once a month to prepare and teach the program. I went and looked for my dad. And we started having lunch every time I was in town. So because I forgave, this rippling effect of forgiveness, I ended up looking for my dad. I said, you know what? He wasn't well. Going back to that empathy piece, having time to reflect, right? Gain perspective, see the humanity. I realized my dad wasn't well. He didn't want to intentionally hurt my mom. And so I have my dad back in my life. My son met his grandfather at 13, all because I keep choosing forgiveness. That by the time we actually did the live launch at the university campus for our program, I had both my parents sitting in the front row cheering me on, which I hadn't had, again, probably since 4 or 5 when I was doing gymnastics, because I chose forgiveness. And I can keep going, but I'm just giving you a sense of why I'm so fired up about spreading this message. But it all started from a commitment.
Yeah. Wow. So first of all, thank you very much for sharing those stories. And I think they're so powerful that you can't not realize how powerful forgiveness is, right? And the ripple effects. And just to go back on one of the things that you mentioned, so with the emotions, I've had conversations about emotions before, and we often let the emotions run our decisions. They come up, or I'm not sure how it works, but they seem to be the first thing that shows up. They seem to get fired up, and certainly in arguments, what the emotion is. Obviously, it depends on the situation, but it's not about not feeling those emotions. I know I've talked about sort of suppressing emotions, and I don't think that's okay. I think avoiding emotions is it can have long-term effects, but I love the way that you framed it in terms of you have a goal and a commitment to your son, and it's a way to not manage. I don't know if we manage emotions, do we? Or how would you say it? Is it?
You
Yeah.
do want to take time to process. So within that framework, I didn't go through all of it, but within that framework, we start with processing the emotions that we're feeling. That's the start. And that's why I say forgiving is not forgetting. It's not suppressing. It is facing what is, doing the healing work. This is just one tool. Maybe if there's something that's so egregious, you may need to get therapy. So whatever it is for you to be able to actually process those emotions so you can respond versus react in a more empowered way, healthy way.
Yeah. I think there's so much wisdom in just that, and again, like you say, it's not something, these aren't quick fixes. I'm sure there's loads of tools to help with some of these things, but that's a journey in itself. But making your primary goal the thing that's important, really, during those challenging times and things, you can say, right, okay, I will keep committing to, when these emotions do come up, just understanding them, seeing what's going on, and see if there's something. It's I'm just thinking how powerful that must be for everybody, people that are struggling, because often, again, we put the focus on not the wrong thing. It might be the right thing for a moment, but when you look at the bigger picture, and like you say, and from all of that ripple effect that's had such an impact on your child, your husband, your mum, your dad, and you, right? Let's not forget you in all of that. So,
not to mention, it informs my purpose now.
yeah.
So many times when we're holding on to those negative emotions, it's blocking us being our highest and best and being free and clear to be really fully in what we are called to do and purposed for, So yeah, I would not be here with you today. Right?
Yeah.
If I hadn't chosen that commitment.
Yeah, it's just it's amazing. It's amazing. Just as a question just popped up in my head. So you are a chief forgiveness officer. You don't work in a company, so you work for your own company. Do you think there should be more people? So I try to, again, sell consultancy services to sort of explain to people the value of being what was chief happiness officer in my own word. Do you think companies could benefit from someone like yourself in every single company?
Ooh, I love where you're going with it. Absolutely. Can you imagine that there was someone intentionally focused on supporting people in the practice of forgiveness for more collaborative, cohesive, engaged, more highly productive, innovative teams?
Yeah. It's strange because when I was thinking that, then I think about all these companies that go, no, we're just going to go fast, and and I was like, no, that's short term. Long term is about building foundation of awareness of what's going on, talking about the things that are actually behind the things that we think are going on. And it's so when you talk about forgiveness, it's so obvious. Like now that you said it, I'm just like, this seems nuts that it's just not something that is talked about, we even think about. And you just go, yeah, absolutely, because even small companies, there must be stuff that's not being said. So I can't imagine there's a company out there, unless you've worked there before and you've solved all their problems, which I can't imagine. That's there's always new stuff coming out, but yeah,
People are going to people.
Yeah.
In the workplace, whether it's at home, at church, people are going to people. No one is immune to this. And so how do we bring the humanity back and how we resolve our breakdowns? They're inevitable. Challenges, conflicts, inevitable. Forgiveness is not a one and done. It is a process and a practice. That's what I always say.
Yeah.
So yeah, imagine we had more tools that we were, equipped to handle those things. So that's what, like I said, that's my mission.
Yeah, it's amazing. Are you training other people up to do something similar? Is there an academy or anything, or is that on the roadmap for you to do?
Yeah, a train the trainer is on the roadmap. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But in the meantime, I'm just getting out there.
Oh, it's fantastic. Well, I think that's an amazing point just to sort of end on. We've gone over the hour I say normally that we should take these to. Honestly, you've given me so much to think about. Just I feel a bit silly that I've not come across this before. I just now I know I'm going to be such a big advocate for it. So honestly, my mind's going in all different directions. So it's amazing.
Thank you.
So for people wanting to find you, I found you on LinkedIn. We connected through there through a mutual contact. Is that the best place for people to find you, or website? Where should they go?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great. Definitely follow my newsletter, The Forgiveness Edge. My website is liveyourbestlifeforyou.com, and check out my book, The 90-Day Conquering Unforgiveness Journal for High Performing High Achievers. It's a mouthful, on Amazon. And feel free to leave a review.
Oh, amazing. So the way this works is when this post goes, I repost it, and I'll put all the links to all of those things in the repost, so it's easier for people to find. But for today, you've blown my mind. I feel silly, as in I should have known this before, but I'm so grateful for this conversation. So interesting, so powerful. I think I'm going to adopt some of this in my life. Start small, I would imagine. But I'm really grateful for you showing up for me today, and just sharing all this wisdom. It's been amazing.
It was an honor. Thank you for sharing your platform. Thank you for just even being so open and actually connecting with the work. It's not, as you said, it's not something that's normally talked about. I'm kind of out here, trying to spread the word. So the fact that it so resonated with you, it means a lot.
Yeah. It's one of the big things I started these lives was I think the world of work is changing, or has changed, but we're doing things still the old way. Companies are slow to change, or just don't see the benefit. And having conversations like this and bringing that awareness to people that there are, there's so many different ways of working, and at the heart of it is about people. And for me, you're the shining example of that, because companies are built around people, but we forget that. We think it's the business first, and you're out there helping people. And if there's anything I can do to spread your message, please let me know. That this will be the first start of it. But I'm going to send people your way when we have conversations about struggling companies. So I really appreciate you.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you. I really do. And so you're in the UK?
So I'm from the UK, but I'm based in Luxembourg. I go back to the UK occasionally to see my family. There's quite a few companies in Luxembourg, so it's Europe. I'm just thinking, if you ever come for a trip over here, I'm sure there's companies you could definitely help out here. So,
Oh my goodness! And if you're ever in the US, look me up. I'm in Connecticut now, but I'm not far from New York.
100%. It's on my list. So I'm definitely going to look you up.
And then how can I support you? Is it just when it goes live, making sure I share it, but is there anything else I can do to support you?
No, I think, just repost to your network. I think getting this message out, and again, this platform is about, just bringing new ideas. And again, I'm not preaching to say that I have all the answers. I don't. It's just about bringing new ideas or things that we haven't talked about sometimes it's old things that we've just forgotten about, and just simple practice about connecting with people. We had a moment just before we went live, and we were talking about the younger generation and how connected they are from a technology perspective, but how disconnected they are from sort of deep and personal relationships. And I think bringing all of that knowledge, all that wealth, and just bringing awareness, and it's not one size fits all, but just bringing that, I think, can bring around change. And again, that's just sharing that on your platform, and I'll do it likewise from my feed as well. So I think that would be the good start.
Okay, great. Oh,
Amazing.
well, I wish you all, keep me posted on your journey, because I know you said you just took this leap of faith. So
Yeah.
but I had such a great time. Such a great
fantastic. And there's no way you're not coming back for a round two.
Hey, wow.
Maybe it's just about me telling you all the updates that I've integrated into my life for forgiveness. So, but for today.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah.
From that aspect too. Yeah, that would be very cool. I gotta let Emily know. Oh my God, I had such a good time.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. So thank you very much. Have a good rest of the week, and we'll stay in contact.
Okay, take care.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, Dion. Bye.